Mhm. Right, I think we are ready to start. I'd like to welcome you all to this meeting of the Scrutiny Committee. Particularly like to recognise, as well as our own committee members, members of the Scrutiny Committee, I should say, that other councillors are present, and we're most grateful to have your support as well for this meeting. We ask if there are any apologies to note.
An apology from Councillor Coleman.
Thank you. Declarations of interest. Anyone wish to express a declaration of interest? This is an opportunity to stress it. We then go on to the minute. As usual, it's a very fulsome and excellent minute. It helps greatly to give us the background to our previous meeting, and I ask members if they would note it and invite anyone that wishes to raise anything under the minute to express it now. Right, thank you. Moving on then, agenda item 4, the rolling action log. It's not a very fulsome log this occasion. Anyone wish to raise anything under the rolling action log? Yes, John.
Thanks for letting me in, convener. It's obviously on page 18, the progress report with Slamanan Primary School Nearney Learning Centre. Obviously, there have been delays in getting the inspector in there again, following, as you know, we had some shocking reports some time ago, and the education has been doing well to try to alleviate that, but there seems to be so what I can, when we'd expect them in, and the issues are now, I know the community council raised last week, and they've invited the head teacher over at the next meeting, a number of issues identified at the school, and I've asked education for an update on them, and I've not heard that as yet, which is unusual. They've asked questions, and probationary teachers, they see it as a downward step, but obviously, you know, it's government legislation, but we don't seem to have informed people, you know, of the guidelines now. There's real issues with the behaviour, especially if an inspector went in the new with the behaviour of the enhanced provision, some of the children, there's suggestions that there's a lack of numbers there for staff and a whole different number of issues relating to that. So because the inspector is due in, you know, I hope we can find out what's going on, because certainly the community has expressed the concerns to me, which is unusual, and so I'd just like to raise that if there's any information that I could get on that question, please.
I wonder, Robert Naylor, could you come in anyway on this one?
Just to say that, to the best of my knowledge, the inspectorate have not yet made an appointment to tell us when they're going to come back. But the issues that Councillor McLuckie raises, happy to go away and explore these. I hadn't heard of these issues until today, but I'll chase a response for you, Councillor McLuckie.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Anyone else wish to raise anything under rolling action law? If not, we're on to agenda item 5, corporate plan. And Kenny, I think this is, we're going to read this one.
Yep. Thank you very much, convener. As always, I appreciate that members have had a good chance to look at it and have hopefully some questions to ask. There is colleagues on the call who are eager to answer these. So I'll go through the report, very much a high-level overview, to then leave it open for questions, convener. So, regarding this report, as part of the purpose of this report, as members are aware, the council priorities were approved in the corporate plan on the 30th of September 2020. This report provides performance information on the community's priorities. Section 3 of this report highlights that this is the 5th Council Performance Report to Scrutiny Committee of progress against delivering our priorities. This is the second round of reporting specifically on communities, provides an overview of the work they're taking in this area. Council of Future Priority projects are reported to elected members via the Council of Future Board. Also, as requested by elected members earlier this year, these projects will now be reported to the appropriate executive committees to seek early elected member agreement to progress service transformation. Performance management framework now feeds into the public performance reporting portal Falkirk Performs, which will host a range of transparent performance information on the council. Section 4 of the report provides an overview within appendices 1 to 5, which shows the performance statements for communities. Also in appendix 1, there's a summary dashboard that shows the overall performance for communities. 4.4 of the report has the 5 headers of our key achievements within this period of reporting. And I'm sure members will be able to go through these and pick out any they would like additional information on. Section 5 of the report outlays the finances, and it's worth noting that the community's work stream has the potentially saving almost 1.9 million this financial year. Also worth noting as regards the climate change project, which is one of the council's priority council future projects, and it will underpin the work of the council. Therefore, in conclusion, the report provides a progress update on delivering the community priorities within the corporate plan. If I take you back to section 2 of this report, the recommendations are outlined there, and happy with colleagues to take any further questions.
Thank you very much, Kenny. Could I ask that members concentrate their questions on the body of the report at this stage, and then we'll lead into the appendices thereafter? Thank you. Councillor Binney, Lorna, you've got...
No, it's the question I had was on the appendix. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. We'll come to that. Thank you very much. David, yes, David Balfour.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, page 23.
Sorry, David, we seem to have lost your sound. Could you? Are you still on mute?
Is that now working okay now?
Yes, got you
That's
now,
fine.
David.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, page 23. The 160 local residents. It's a very, very low number. It's very poor, to be honest. Just want to know what we can do to increase that number to get a better overall view of our constituents' views. Who these people were. Is it the same people that we're getting all the time? So we're getting a kind of restricted view of a very small number of people, or is it different people that we're getting to get a wider sort of view?
Kenny, can you?
Being happy to come in there. I appreciate councillor numbers seem low at 160. 2 or 3 things that I would like to make committee aware of is that it was 160, absolutely. We done this through a pandemic, and to get 160 people there through different issues that maybe people were facing, I thought was potentially pretty good. But again, being a first chance of getting people involved, our communities involved. I think the other thing to make committee aware is this was intensive. This was 160 people of intensive discussions. This wasn't just a tick sheet exercise. So we had an hour to 2 hours of conversation with individuals. And trying to pick up the one of the points you said there, was it the same people? What I will say is there were different people there. I'm not saying some of the original, as you keep saying, was it the same people that always go, but there was additional, because we had school pupils involved in different areas to where we called the hard to reach. And that was through, obviously, the third sector. And so I can confirm there was a lot of different areas of people with different interests that came to these meetings. How can we get more people there? 2 or 3 things. Need to try harder, as they say. But at the same time, I think due to the work that we're doing, the transparency that we're doing, and the confidence of communities, I think more people will get involved. Community choices will also help that, so that they can see that it's the things that we're doing now, that it's not a tick box exercise, and we're fully embracing the position of the communities going forward. So yeah, 160 does seem low, but hopefully if you listen to my comments, then it's gave us a lot of valuable information that's again helped us at the present time produce a draft Falkirk plan, which is part of what the communities have asked for.
Can I ask you,
Okay.
Kenny, to tell me where actually these 160 people come from? What's their background? How are they selected?
I don't know the actual backgrounds of individuals. They were of all the wards right across the council, and they've all different backgrounds, all differing backgrounds. It's not a question that we did ask, convener, at the time.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got a further question.
Yes, Dave.
Page 24, the section on the create a 5-year litter strategy. It's a major issue, litter. I'm just looking for a wee bit of information on how this is progressing, if there's been any improvements so far. I'm still getting a lot of complaints about litter everywhere, from all over the town. I'm quite sure other councillors are. What can we do as regards enforcement on this, and what has been happening in regards to enforcement?
I think someone who's there to speak to that. Oh, Ian Dry. Ian, sorry, I didn't see you there, Ian. Can you pick that one up, please?
What I'll do is I'll take action to get an update for you on that. Certainly, Ken's mentioned there's been engagement with the Falkirk planning team, and certainly we will be soon having to engage on local place plans, which again will cover obviously spatial planning, but will also cover and dovetail into what Kenny's team have been doing. And certainly it's one thing that we're aware of. That's something that's being raised by some of the community. So I'll certainly take an action away and get an update for you to see what the plans are and bring that back to the next appropriate avenue for you for further consideration. Happy to do that.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Kenny.
Yes, thank you for that, Ian. Yes, thank you. John?
Thanks, convener. We're just sticking to the first 2 or 3 pages of the report before we go into appendices, like you said. Page 23, we've got supporting people, and we said we've opened the central hub. We're hearing that some of the hubs are not going to take payments from people. They're big queue at Asda, everybody paying their rent, because some of the old folk like to see receipts for their bills, and so their rents and council tax and electricity, everything seems to get paid at Asda. So we're going to be reviewing these hubs, but if we're not going to take any money, and all these other people are going into like say Asda, how can we compare it? I mean, if we're not going to take a payments, obviously, what we want to go into the hub for? You know what I mean? It just seems strange to me. So maybe if somebody could define why, if we're not taking payments, why, and as I says, and express why it is they're going to Asda. So that's my first question.
Okay. Stuart, if you could do that one, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Convener. Councillor McCluck is correct in what he says. The hubs are not taking payments at the moment. Members will be aware that the hubs have reopened a month or so ago, and that reopening was on a limited basis. I would remind members that ability to make payments is there for our citizens at over 100 different locations across districts. So that might be in a local newsagent or a post office or the like. So citizens don't need to come to the hub to make a payment. I think that's a good thing, that people can go to somewhere more local rather than having to go to a central point to do that. The purpose of the hubs really is to help those who are in most need of our services, so a bit of a kind of triage arrangements where we've got colleagues from across the council service who can deal with customers and deal with what can sometimes be multi-complex issues that customers have. So the purpose of the hubs really, I think, is to assist those in our towns and villages who need our help. As far as making payments is concerned, there's probably a more local arrangement that will be more convenient for our customers and citizens than dropping into one of our 3 council hubs. But again, as Councillor McCluckie said, we've said that we're going to review that situation once we've got the start up of the 3 hubs. I hope that helps explain where we are. Thanks.
It is an explanation, and I've got to accept that. However, it doesn't be a reflection on what the community's aspirations are, because they always paid rent at the, in the rent office, and there's a reason to come in if there are other issues. But we have stopped the reasons for coming in. We always had staff in these hubs taking payments. So who took the decision to stop taking payments? Like, if ASDA can take the payments, cash payments, and a card payment, I don't see why the hub can't. Why we have different risk assessments. But I have to accept what comes back. But I'm going to be coming back later at a later date with further questions, is because the people are not happy. My next question, convener, if I may, children and young people. It says here we're obviously trying to save a lot of funding on getting people, these new pilots, to get people more local, and these new pilots that's took up is going to save £500,000. But the question has to be, who evaluates success, or is it funding led? Because we seem to be going to save a lot of money from nearer to home and these new initiatives. And yet I've been a councillor 15 years, and every time we used to trying to say, support people at home rather than in a care home, we were told we couldn't get people back to they're best looked after in their families, for example. We couldn't get people back because there's a safety issue and other things. So it just seems strange to me. We're going to be able to save all this funding that we couldn't save all the years when we asked. But who is evaluating the success of the pilots? Is it independent people? Or is it solely success that we saved the money? Or are we going to look at the pilots on the supporting the children on the edges of care and how they feel if their service has been improved or that, So that's my question.
Robert, could you respond?
Thanks, convener. In terms of the evaluation, the evaluation will relate to, I suppose, the data that we gather in terms of the numbers of children that are in different bits of care. So part of the strategy is that we will have more children in kinship care, we'll have more children in foster care, and less children in external residential settings. So the whole idea is that they stay closer to their own home, their own community, stay with their own peer group, go to the school that they went to before. So the evaluation around that is individualised for the outcomes for the individual children. The success will be measured in terms of the outcomes for the individual children, but will also be measured in terms of the success that we have in reducing expenditure over a period of time. This won't be the case where in terms of the young person, they have something to compare to. So the journey for a young person will be from the point that they're taken into care, what's their alternative care, and hopefully that's stable and continuous. But it's not that we will be having children, for example, in a care home, taken out of it and then given something else so that they can, at a later point, reflect on what was better. This is principally about having options available so that children don't go into care homes first. They stay with us. So hopefully that helps with your question.
That helps immensely, and I much appreciated, Robert, that full response. I feel a lot better now. My next question, convener, for me, is on the environmental side. We see this often. We've come up with a new litter strategy to deal with issues, and we always see there's no resource implications, no risk, no legal implications, nothing to do with environmental impact, never. But the fact is that as far as we'll take litter, there's 330 litter bins short during this administration. There are four members of staff missing from the team who used to go out and empty the bins. So suppose we put the 330 bins, which would cost 55,000 to replace, we would need to spend another 188,000 a year on staff to go and empty them, which the jobs have disappeared, and we've lost 2 vehicles at another £55,000 to go there and take the men to go to the litter bins. And as I say, we would need the litter, we're told, would be charged £100 a tonne to dispose of. But meanwhile, the members of the public are picking up the litter, and we are taking it away and disposing it. So I don't see these things. But if these reductions in service, no wonder the public's had to get involved and do things. But I just find it strange that in a report we see no resources, no legal hangings, no impact, when clearly there is. I mean, if we can take 330 bins and no having it away and no having impact, well, we'll take the rest away, eh? You know what I mean? I wouldn't, because obviously the same rationale, you know, it wouldn't have another impact, but the result is it would. And when we go down to the same page at the end, community, as I say, the community's all doing litter bins, but Asda, recently in Asda, there was no bins. I don't know what happened there, but there was no bins. But there was one gentleman just, you know, there for full day, just going round about picking stuff up. But I believe that Asda has put one bin back in that area, but there used to be a lot more. So it's a very, very dirty and tidy area, a very busy area. And I just didn't see why it's not got sufficient bins, to be honest. So
John, I
thank
think
you.
your opportunity to ask these in a question form is to go to Ian Dryden. And Ian, would you like to pick it up?
Yes, convener, happy to do so. I think Councillor McCluskey is making some valid points, and obviously, as advised earlier, given undertaking to bring back an update on the litter strategy, I'll make sure that we cover these points that Councillor McCluskey is raising about the resource implications and obviously how the litter strategy is going to be obviously targeted and how it's rolled out over these next few years. So happy to cover these points in that update report that I'll bring back.
Thank you very much.
Hopefully, convener, because as I say, all the figures came from the service. I mean, these were official figures from I think Dot Reid. So, you know, it's for own figures I'm quoting here and own comments. So, thank you very much.
Thank you for
Thank you,
that.
convener.
Any other questions before we go into the appendices? Yes, yes. David, sorry, David.
Thank you, convener. I'd like to go to page 23 and down to the children and young people. Down at the bottom, convener, between March 2020 and March 21, there has been a 5% increase in local authority foster care, a 6% increase in kinship placements, and a 20% increase in independent foster provision. What I'd like to explain to me, convener, what I understand what the local authority foster care is and independent foster provision is, but I was led to believe that that had been brought into line, and with the independent foster care had been brought into line with the council. So why have we still got this, and why is there such a big gap between 5% with the local authority and 20% with the independent authority? Could Mr. Naylor or somebody explain that?
Robert Naylor, could you pick it up?
So what the plan was to move from a base of somewhere around 60 foster care placements up to something like 90. So what you'll see there in the 5% is that we have sought to appoint more Falkirk Council foster carers, and have been marginally successful in doing that. And part of the reason that it's only 5% is that although we have recruited new foster carers, we have had other foster carers who retire, and that's a cycle that continues. So it's actually quite difficult to grow the local provision. But the independent one that you see there, that's about us going to contract with different foster care providers. So we've had an increase in the number of external providers that offer places for us, so that the overall number of foster placements that are available to the council has grown, and that's in line with the strategy to keep children fostered in their own local area. So it's a complex balance of the foster care provision, different terms and conditions for those in the independent sector from those in Falkirk. The long-term plan is that we would have as many foster carers that are Falkirk foster carers as we need, but we're on a bit of a journey, and the short-term solution to that is to have independent ones so that we don't have to send children away to external residential schools.
Thank you, Robert. I do understand
Thank
that
you.
it's very complex, but it's just I remember that we're trying to bring the independent back into the authority, but I do see the problems. Convener, if I may ask just one more question, it'll be to Mr. Dryden. It's back to the litter again on page 24. It says it created a 5-year litter strategy that enables partnership working with the council and empowers the communities, the local businesses, landowners, and individuals to tackle a shared problem, which is litter. Ian, do we approach these people, the local businesses, and ask for their help for the litter? What does that exactly mean, that we're bringing them in, the local businesses and that? Could you explain that?
Yeah, I think what I would say to that, Councillor Grant, clearly, obviously, as a result of the pandemic, as you're well aware from the reports you've had, that certainly we've had a lot closer working relationship with the communities and businesses, third sector. And really, it's something we want to continue on that kind of business model. Clearly, we all have to do things differently. We have to certainly adapt as an authority. And certainly that'll be one of the key strands of that strategy, is to try and work in partnership, greater collaboration, trying to pool resources where we can, whatever those resources may well entail, obviously not just financial. And I would certainly think if there's a working relationship that can develop and is developing through community conversations that we've been having, we want to certainly try and build on that foundation that's there.
Thank you. And is there a response? What is the response from the businesses? Are they grasping it? Are they taking it on board?
I don't have that information before me just now, Councillor Grant, but as I say, as part of my undertaking to provide a further update to the committee, I'll ensure I will give the update will cover what discussions have taken place to date, what those responses are, and particularly also what the intention is to actually further enhance that aspect of it. So I'm happy to take that away.
Thank you, Mr. Dryden. Thank you, Convener.
Jim Blackwood. Jim, you've been waiting to get in.
Thanks, Convener. Just a couple of quick questions. One on funding. The evaluation is underway for the first pilot phase of community choices. Will this committee get a feedback on these results? Is that evaluation?
Convener, I'm happy to provide it. All members will get an update of the feedback of that evaluation. We'll bring that to a committee, but happy to then forward it on to this committee, Convener, or bring it here, depending on what is agreed.
Okay. Another one, I'm going to touch on litter as well, Ian, and involving the communities. And this isn't something new, because I've been a councillor in 2007, and with a litter strategy team in place back then, and I've done quite a number of community litter pickups. And community out there, and I've never met anybody in the community who's been a litter pick that actually dropped any litter. We seem to be sending a message out to say, take a pride in your community, do a litter pick. I'm sorry, what was the message we were sending out is take a pride in your community, don't drop litter. Got to get to the heart of that. I can tell you that in the Drove Loan, that's one of my walking routes. There's an old fella goes up and down that Drove Loan virtually daily. I haven't seen him for a couple of weeks now, and the Drove Loan's a mess again. And this guy's going out, and the old guy's going out, and when I spoke to him one time and commented on the fact that he was doing this job, and it's soul destroying, because this guy's clearing up one day and he's back out, and it's as bad the next morning. So the answer isn't, because people will get fed up litter picking every month or every 2 months or whatever. It's good to start with, but the bonus we've got to get is stop the litter, and we've got to get some form of enforcement. I know it's difficult. I've never seen it. I can walk along the road there and see litter everywhere, and I haven't seen anybody throwing it in the car, or kids dropping it. But that's happening, and until such times we got a grip of it, it's not going to stop.
No, if I may, I'll come back to Councillor Black, but you're raising very valid points, which applies right across, obviously, the council's area. There's a balance here, and I think certainly it's taking nice and solve that. And it is down to people behaviours, and I think it's to try and look at how we can take it. Enforcement is certainly going to be a part of that, but I think we've also got to try and look at other means. You know, we have over the years had enforcement powers and provisions, and it's always that difficult one. There will be certain hotspot areas that the best one in the world, you go out one day and the next day that problem's back. We need to try and, obviously see how we can try and work with our communities, work with the third sector and other parties. And I think it's all about trying to get out that positive message. I think the further we can get the working and collaboratively with communities to try and raise the awareness through the profile, and it's that balance between publicity, community empowerment, working with communities, and also enforcement where it's needed. And yes, we still have to have that, but it's trying to find that balance. It's not an easy one, because clearly if it was easy, we would not be talking about it today, but it's a very valid point, and it's something we need to carefully think about. But I do think certainly the way we are now in direction of travel with working closer with our communities is certainly, hopefully, a good start here, and should continue, and it may well assist us here. But no, I think you're right. The enforcement will still be there. There is legislation to cover that, but it's trying to find that balance and finding the responsibility. But it's down to behaviours, and you'd hope certainly through increased publicity, improving community working, that maybe one or two people can actually also help and assist and lead by example. But you're right, it's not an easy one, and it's something we just have to be very mindful of, and we'll need to keep reviewing as part of our strategy.
Thanks, Ian.
Thank you very much, Ian, and thanks, officers, for the responses to the questions. Before we go on to the appendix, perhaps I can ask one question on page 22 under projects. It says in the frame giving the different information at the very bottom. It has an area regarding advice hubs, redesign of housing property services, and community assets and learning estates. And it says that the report to the Communities Workstream Board by officers, these are all items I know of considerable interest and concern to councillors. Can I ask, in actual fact, an explanation as to why this is going only to the Workstream Board, and when it would be intended that it would be shared with councillors? And Stuart, I think perhaps I should invite you to respond.
Thank you, convener. What members have agreed is that our top 10 priority projects will specifically report into the executive with the scope and remit of each of these 10 projects, and progress reports with each of the 10. The Council of the Future change projects that sit underneath these 10, so that's probably another 20, some of which you've just referred to, convener, don't report in in those terms, but instead are covered in the progress reports that are included in the appendices to this report and the reports which will follow under enterprise and innovation. So if you look at something like roads and grounds maintenance, it would be covered in the appendix to this report in terms of progress. Is it on target? What savings is it expected to deliver? What are the key tasks that are on target, off target, etc. So all of the reports, all of the projects are reported to members. It's just a question of the level of detail in which reports are presented to members. I hope that answers your question, Convener.
Thank you for that very much. Thank you. John, you wish to come in?
Yes, I know I've already been in, and thanks for the
All right.
indulgement. It was a comment that obviously one of the officers made there about the balanced approach to litter and enforcement being a part of that balance. The last figures I got from the department was that in a 12-month period there was only 10 people prosecuted for dropping litter, and I think it was 11 in 12 months for the full team for dog fouling. That seems a very strange balance to me to deal with a massive problem that we're all aware of across our communities. So I was just wondering about that balance could be relooked at, please.
Ian, could we have that?
Yeah, I'll
assurance?
come into Councillor Clucky's made some valid points again, but it's something we can look at. And I think that's clearly part of the update report or briefing that we'll give you. We'll look at that, as I've said. Enforcement is certainly going to form part of the strategy, but it's how, if we can look at alternative means to try and address the matters in hand. And a lot of it comes back to pub behaviours and trying to encourage people's behaviours to change and adapt, and it's trying to find a suitable way forward. And it's something we just need to be mindful of and try. And I think the key thing is to try innovative solutions or other avenues that may well be open, and let's try these. But I think it's something we'll need to look at, and particularly with the history of the prosecutions. And it's that balance between the proportionate balance of taking prosecutions and as an alternative means to deal with the solution. So nothing's off the table, and it's something we need to look at.
Thank you. Can I invite members now to look at the appendices, and we'll take it to starting with Appendix 1 on page 26 and ask if there's any. Lorna, yes.
Yes, thank you, Convener. I've got a question about Appendix 2, and it's column
Could we
OE.
just ask first if there's anyone wishes to raise anything under Appendix 1?
Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon.
No, I don't see any. Yes. John, yes, Councillor McCluskey.
On page 1, Convener, obviously we've got a child poverty action report and all of that in Newport, and we see what we're doing in the schools and that, and for period products, which is fine. But when will we ever be seriously working with our colleagues in government to try to end the need for food banks? You know what I mean? We seem to be putting more money into them. Long term, more people are going to them. And the idea being surely that at some stage we should get to a point that that we don't need them again, because they certainly weren't here before, but they're certainly needed now. And I know the work that officers, elected members, and the public and charities never are doing there to help feed the people that require it. But as I say, when will we be actually man enough to come up with a strategy to hit an end date to try to resolve it seriously? Because we're just keeping it going basically now. Thank you.
I think, John, that's a very valid comment, but I'm not altogether sure there's a question there that needs to be responded to. If we can now, with my apologies to Lorna, go on to Appendix 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. I've got a question, Appendix 2, and it's column 08. Ensure people feel safe within their community and live in high quality housing. And as we're all aware, because of the pandemic, the length of time we're living in our houses at the moment, so therefore they should be good quality. I was really interested, I'm really impressed. There's going to be external fabric improvements, replacement of windows and doors, etc., etc. But I believe, as a matter of fact, I had an inquiry the other day because I was asking for some residents in Tamford Hill regarding the replacement of windows and doors. And my first question is, I've got a few questions in this area here. There was no start date given as yet. I think there's some delays. So it would be interesting to know if we do have a programme and we do have an anticipated start date, because remember, people in our communities are looking forward to these replacement of windows and doors. So that's my first question.
Kenny, would you pick that one up, please?
Convener, yep, the window and door contract has been awarded. My understanding is the first phase, I think, of roughly about 54 million has been awarded, and it was agreed that it would be targeting the off-gas areas first, and for the windows and doors. Now, subject to finer project details, my understanding also, and I can confirm this for accuracy, out with the meeting, that it will start this year before Christmas. And what I mean by that is getting people on the ground. You have to do surveys. You have to obviously take on individual issues. So we're looking to start it this year and have it up and running the first phase of the new window and door contract.
That's fine, Kenny. Can you tell me, will the residents be notified of that before this happens? Yes.
Yeah.
That's good.
The residents will be notified fully, because obviously there is an inconvenience to our tenants and residents as well. We have to take in special requirements of the individuals as well, if they need to be at the house all day, because obviously if you're taking windows, it can be quite cold and that as well. So yeah,
yes,
all these requirements are taken on board, and we have a full team that's there to support it, and also colleagues in development services there as well to help us go forward.
Thank you. My second question is, and there was no mention of this in this area here, this paragraph here, about ensure people feel safe within their community. I'm sure we're all aware by February 2022, all homes in Scotland is required to have interlock fire alarms, meaning if one alarm goes off, they all go off. And I was looking at the Scottish Government website, and I believe that councils were given some funding regarding this. So I'm wondering, do we as Falkirk Council, do we have a programme regarding these fire alarms, and is that in place at the moment? And are we expecting it to be completed by the date of February 22?
Ravina, come in on that. Yes, we have. We've been aware of this for almost 3 years, and have been doing this for 3 years, councillor, and we're well on track and will be completed by the deadline. We do it in all void properties as well, so when a property comes void, that's one of the checks as well. So it's one of the things we're pretty confident that we've been doing that for some years to meet the new legislative requirement.
I'm really pleased about that. I've just got a lot more question about the working alongside partner agencies and mobile CCTV. What regarding the mobile CCTV, as a matter of fact, is the priority we have in that, and how is that measured? I mean, I take it all councillors in all areas have lots of antisocial behaviour and pockets and things like that. So how is that assessed? Is that assessed done by the number of complaints you get about the area? Is it partners that complain about that area? I'd just like a little bit more about the process, so that obviously the highest priority is getting dealt with quickly in the areas of antisocial behaviour, etc.
Stuart, that might be for you, please.
Yeah, thanks, Canberra. We took a report on CCTV to the Executive Committee just a few weeks or so ago, and happy to share that report with members at the meeting this morning. So that set out where we are in the programme for replacement of our CCTV systems, and that's both fixed cameras and mobile cameras as well. I guess the key to the mobile cameras is the wording of mobile. So as Councillor Binney correctly says, they will be used in areas of antisocial behaviour, but can be moved from place to place, depending on where antisocial behaviour incidents occur. So it's a combination of historic areas that we know of where there's antisocial behaviour, but also the ability to respond to new areas of antisocial behaviour where we'll be able to put a camera in there to be able to help, hopefully, in how we tackle antisocial behaviour. So a combination of both of the things that you said, Councillor Binney.
Thank you.
See any more? David, Councillor Grant, and then Councillor Blackwood.
Thank you, Convener. I think it's a question to Kenny. It's relating to Councillor, just following on for Councillor Binney. Page 31, the private landlords have got to make sure that they're fit and proper. Kenny, who deems them fit and proper? Do we assess them? And the fire smoke alarm law that changes in February, will we make sure that these people are up to date with the legislation change?
Convener, happy to go through yourself. Councillor, absolutely, that is part of the remit at the present time. So when they have their licence to be a private landlord, that is one of the checks that's required, and they have to conform to that. If not, the appropriate action plan is put in place and they've got to follow that. If not, there is a process that we would follow, and if they didn't comply to that, we would look to bring it to committee, licence committee, for the registration of that landlord. So there's a really robust process in place that falls under the private sector team.
Thank you, Kenny. Thank you, Convener.
Councillor Blackwood?
Convener. Quick question on page 31.
Sorry.
Sorry,
Please go on, please go on. Thank you.
31, the 36.5 million to improve our homes to meet the Scottish Housing Quality Standard. On page 38, it says we've got 98.6% of our housing stock that meet that standard. So is this 36 million going to bring it closer to the 100%, or is that never going to be achievable? I know it's going to be an ongoing process, but are we ever going to get 100% meeting the Scottish standard?
Vina, again, answer the question, Councillor Blackwood. Both. The potential of getting 100%, a lot of it also depends on owner-occupiers, because sometimes they can be a block at that. So things like the door entry systems, where it's deemed as an improvement, we can't force that through, but it is part of the Scottish Housing Quality Standard. But the 36 million itself is there to keep our properties up to that standard. So things like, so we just spoke about now, regular checks of smoke detectors, wind and watertight roofing. So if we didn't do anything, that would fall down. So that money is both to keep us to that standard, but to improve as close as we can ever get to 100%. As I said, we have got abayances where we've owner occupiers and where we couldn't force that through, or in very rare occasions where it's no cost effective, and we would look at different approaches, but that's not a case within Falkirk.
That means some of our tenants are missing out on a quality standard because of private residence. Is that what we're saying?
What we're saying is we can't enforce an improvement to that standard that they have.
So tenants are missing out.
There is a difference in regards to owner occupiers, yes.
So some of the tenants are missing out and have their quality.
You could word it that way if you wish, Councillor. Yes.
You should be a politician, Kenny.
I would never match yourself.
Right, okay, thanks for that.
Councillor Nimmo, I think you waited to put in a question.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Just a quick point in relation to what's been said about the replacement windows and doors. I think obviously the contracts to be welcomed, especially for properties in the lower and upper Braes as well. We need to make sure that our properties are wind and watertight, and this will help. But just tagged onto this, our properties have to be adequately heated as well. Now, I believe that, especially in the Braes area, that gas is no longer an option, which is probably down to the zero carbon agenda more than anything else. And I'm just wondering, what other measures are we currently looking at to provide adequate heating within our urban areas like the Braes? And I know there's other areas in the Falkirk Council district as well that suffer the same problems. Can we maybe just get an update in that respect? Because it's all very well having new doors and windows, but you need to make sure that the heating's provided as well. Thanks, Convener.
Kenny,
Convener?
you again, please.
Yeah, no, happy to do that. Probably first thing is not so sure where the councillor has got the information that there is no gas to go up to these areas, because I'm unaware of that myself. That's still part of an options appraisal that we have to bring back to committee. And one of these options is to look at that, to look at other types of energy, like say ground source or air source heating, and that would tie that also into other renewables like say solar paneling as well, which obviously tries to reduce the cost of energy. As said earlier there, we have heating systems now that meet the Scottish Housing Quality Standard, but it's very much how much can we help in regards to fuel poverty and making sure that the properties are as wind and watertight as possible, and obviously maximum uses of the energy is produced. So these are the things that we're also looking at when we do look at additional heating systems now, but also going forward as well to meet all the different agendas. So we have other things in future where we talk about hydrogen and other renewables, but it's something working with colleagues in development services and also with Scottish Government that we've got an eye on, Councillor.
Convener, the only reason I mentioned the current gas situation is because it doesn't really fit in with the zero carbon agenda or the green agenda for that matter. So we really need to be looking at other options. Thanks, Convener.
Councillor McCluskey.
Thanks, Convener. I've got three questions here. The first one is on page 29. What community group? It says that there's been in the 9 wards have been 18 community groups consulted to bring in kind of like community hubs kind of things. Could you expand on that in my area, please, Kenny? Firstly, what community groups in my area have been consulted, and where are we talking about community hubs?
Yeah. Councillor, I've not got the exact details with me now to that detail, but I can certainly furnish you to what the actual groups were. It's just a high level report, but I can certainly do that. But this is very much about empowering the communities and getting more communities involved and more groups. You heard me speak about earlier in regards to, is it the same people that keep coming to these things, and it's about empowering additional groups, and that's where we've been using our third sector colleagues to get more to help us to get involved with further groups. But I'm certainly happy, Convener, to publish that information to Councillor McCluskey.
I thank you for that, Kenny. And as I say, it would be grateful. But the only time I heard a community hub, it was going to be at the Braes High School, and that isn't in my ward, to be honest. That's in the Lower Braes. But so that's that. My next question is going back to what we spoke about earlier, about this 175 people. And I know that you answered that it was an in-depth survey that was done with the 175 folk, and you felt that was a good figure. I tend not to agree with you. Obviously, officers are entitled to their opinion, and I'm not to question that. But as far as looking at for a member of the public or somebody in the street, that does not look at a very good balanced consultation for the size of Falkirk. I'm just wondering if it goes below 100, would be quite a very in-depth survey. You know, I mean, is the answer going to be there on that question? So that's my question there. And if I follow on, it's the same thing as what Councillor Nimmo said, in relating to the fuel poverty by the heating. Now, there have been several community meetings in my area with the Forgotten Villages campaigns. You know, they've certainly been on the TV plenty, they've been on all the different papers plenty, and promises and undertakings were made to these people that were going to look at these things certainly a couple of years ago. And it's also came to pass, we got word from housing that we were going to extend the maintenance contract, because what officers told me, in fact yourself, that it was going to be, it could take years for this gas thing to come in, and that then takes it into the realm when we're looking to take it out. But people were under the impression that it was round the corner. Speculation was made. We put money in the budgets as if it was around the corner, and the expectations and the disappointment rife right across my communities, who are still suffering from fuel poverty. And so I know it keeps coming up that we're going to get a report, and my family had, I mean, they considered me for a while ago, and what they done, they gave me this object, and it was round, and what it said was, that is a to it. That's around to it, because you're always going to get around to it. So they presented me with that, and I can see that as far as upgrading the heating, and you know, for it's not upgrading the heating to the standard. We want to accept that the heating is compatible to the standard for heating the house. It's just the people you've got to put on body warmers and hoodies that I've done in the past to sit at night and watch your TV, because you can't afford to put the electricity on. I mean, I've no heating on for months, and I put it on for an hour a day in the winter. And I've mentioned that the mice queue up to get out because the house is that cold. You know what I mean? The one outside. But as I say, these are points I've made on a number of occasions. So if you could just add, when is it coming to committee, and when are we going to get these answers that I've asked for and didn't get? What is the increase in costs? What is these other issues? I keep getting told there's going to be reports. So when, as a local member, have I got to get a freedom information to try to get that documentation? Thank you.
Vina,
If you can-
happy to come back.
We can
Some of these
listen to
parts.
John all day, but it'd be interesting to see if you could answer a question there.
Yeah, I'll try my best. If we go back to the 160, as I said, 170, I'll come back to the pandemic and what I mean by 160. Of course, we would like more. We've done it through a pandemic, and that's where I was saying is I thought it was good the numbers we got. I say intense because it was a 2-hour conversations that we've done with individuals through that. That's what I mean by I thought it was good to have these people who gave up their time through a pandemic. Regard to the heating councillor, you're one of the local members within one of the areas. We've tried to keep you abreast as much as possible. You've been given every bit of information as we have ourselves, with the updates that I've sent out to yourselves and where we are in regards to putting out costs and for utility companies. In regards to what we're waiting for, we're very much at the mercy of utility companies. And just recently, I followed that up to see where we were, that the costs had came back higher than expected, and it was agreed by council, and a further report would need to come to council. Now, I know at the present time that they're looking to bring a report to council within the next month for options. So hopefully that will then have a direction that we could go forward. You mentioned there about the additional cost of heating and that. As you may be aware or may not on this occasion, we certainly provided through the summer, recognising that the higher costs we paid out over £36,000 to people for additional fuel payment over the winter to try and help them through this issue. So we recognise that as well, councillor.
Convener, if I may, just one point. The extra money went out to people on prepayment meters. It didn't go to people like myself who have a, just an ordinary meter that you didn't put power cards in, I believe.
Vina, I'm happy to speak to Councillor Roth, because that's, I would say that other people got it. It wasn't just about prepaid, it was people on reductions that got it. We then put a second remit out round that as well for the off-gas areas.
Yeah. Thank you. Does anyone else have a question? If perhaps I can ask myself, turning to page... Sorry.
One quick question.
Yes, please do. Yes, of course, Councillor Bagg.
It's on page 38, Convener.
Average length of time to complete non-emergency repairs in working days. 1925.5, 2021 13.9, and 21 to 22 34.8. That seems quite a difference, and I wonder where the problem lies here.
Convener,
No, I think Councillor Blackwood, that's actually Appendix 4. You're a bit ahead of us as far as that's concerned.
No, I thought we were on other appendices. Sorry, apologies. We'll get to that
Not
one.
at all. Well,
Go
we'll
back, Kenny.
try and take them in order if we possibly can.
Yes,
Just one
apologies.
question on Appendix 2, page, the last page, page 31. I wonder if we just ask Mr. Naylor if he could just give us some more information regarding the, sorry, it's page 32, yes, regarding the work that's been done on speech and language therapy and physiotherapy services, perhaps what the outcome has been of all the review and redesign. It's a matter of great importance and concern, particularly the physiotherapy services, and I would appreciate some background information if possible.
Convener, I can tell you a little bit about the speech and language. I probably will need to consult with colleagues to get some detail that would be meaningful for you on the physiotherapy side. So in terms of speech and language, we've been working with our colleagues in NHS Forth Valley to look at the way in which speech and language services are made available in our schools, and moving to a more community-based model rather than one that is defined by clinical diagnosis. So what many of our schools have done is invested some of the money that they get for pupil equity funding into some training for staff, some recruitment of additional speech and language practitioners, so that speech and language can be delivered on the ground and that families don't need to wait until they get to the end of a very long waiting list in the NHS sector. But if you would leave me with it, I'll get a written briefing prepared to give you some detail of the progress for both the speech and language and the physiotherapy.
Thank you very much. That would be appreciated. David Bright.
Thanks, Convener. If we can just go back to page 28, just looking for a wee bit of information about the community choices. We got notified quite recently of different projects and groups that were successful in getting funding. Some very, very good projects. What I'm concerned about is we're going to get notified of the groups that were unsuccessful and what their projects were, and what help can we give to them. They're maybe not set up, as I mentioned before, they're maybe not set up to get the kind of popularity vote and advertise about the project. We may also have maybe 2 or 3 people that are not actually set up as a constituted group. However, they want to do something in their local area, and they don't have an avenue or whatever to do that, to apply for funding. How can we help them? Because it's maybe a smaller project, but how can we help them achieve things to improve their area?
Convener, happy to answer that. Yes, happy to provide information of those who were not successful, and the community team is there always to help and support. We've offered the unsuccessful that offer of support if they want to go forward, because obviously there's a second iteration of that. You'll be aware yourself, Councillor, the briefing that we provided just recently about community choices. Also bearing in mind there is other avenues like of CBS and CLD are there to support, and they have supported many of the projects so far. So certainly if there's any individual, these ourselves, CBS, CLD are there, always happy to help and increase community involvement.
Okay, thanks for that, Kenny.
Thank you. I think perhaps we should now go on to Appendix 3. I must admit to you that I didn't get very much out of this particular appendix. If anyone would like to speak to it, it would be appreciated because there's not a lot of information given. Any comments at all on Appendix 3? If not, I think we'll go straight on to Appendix 4. And Jim, you were a question on
Yeah.
4, am I right? Thank you.
Sorry, I was ahead of myself.
Sorry.
Convener. Just dropped my paper. I think Kenny's got the question. He's also had a bit of time now to get an answer.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick that one up,
All right.
Convener.
Thank you.
I think this is a really good example of the impact of COVID on our services. So as members will recall, there's been various restrictions in place in terms of access to properties, but also safe working practices as well. So during the pandemic, we continue to allow our tenants to register repairs that were required, whether they were urgent or non-urgent. Some councils took the decision that they would only allow tenants to register urgent repairs. The fact that we weren't able to get into properties for a while and safe working practices means that we've got a backlog in non-emergency repairs because we've prioritised our work to emergency repairs. So the data that you see before you, where we've got that spike up to 30 odd days, just reflects the fact that we've had abnormal working conditions over the course of the last 18 months or so, and that's just reflected in the numbers in the chart before you. We're trying to work through that backlog, and we'll get to the backlog as soon as we can, but hopefully that just kind of gives you an explanation as to why we'll get relatively good performance year on year, and now all of a sudden we've got that spike.
Just a supplement question here. We're taking on manpower to try and claw back this backlog, because you know the backlog. If we can't catch up the backlog, we're not going to catch up. Just as you know, repairs are an ongoing issue.
Yeah, that's correct, and you're correct that we are taking on additional resources to try and do that. So at the moment, we've got building maintenance employees that are spread across a range of activities. My intention is to take on some resources from the private sector to deal with things like voids, which will allow us to dedicate more building maintenance employees to tackling the backlog. We'll see what effect that has. And if that works, then that's good. And if that doesn't work, then we'll need to pause and consider what the next actions are there.
Thanks, Convener. Thanks, Stuart.
Any other questions? Yes. Yes, John, thank you.
Thanks, Convener. I've only one question, and it was partially answered by Stuart there, and it's relating to voids. Normally, we've got the figures for voids come up in these data when it comes before us, but there's no obviously mention of it in the sheet here in the performance indicators. And we have got tenants furious. I've one tenant there must have emailed me 15 times because she'd waited after she got her keys, or waiting 4 months. You know, hadn't got into her house, and so we know that we've had issues with the voids, but really could we hear an update and maybe the next report on the number of voids that we've increasingly had seen. We've got all the folk looking for houses, and the time scale it's taking us to get these houses to a standard. I see that people are satisfied with the standard of the houses, but obviously this is an important issue, and it's not been mentioned in this report, and it normally is the voids. Thank you.
Kenny, can you pick that one up, please?
I think Stuart's on mute and he's going to pick it up. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. My apologies to both of you. Stuart?
Yeah, apologies, Convener. I put myself on mute. it's a good question that Councillor McCluckie asks, and it's the same background to what I've explained to Councillor Blackwood on non-emergencies. So we're bringing in additional resources to try and get our voids programme speeded up. So hopefully over the course of the next couple of months or so, we'll start to see more void properties being brought back into the housing pool. So next time we report on communities, I'm happy to report on where we are with voids, and hopefully next time we report, we'll see an improvement on where we are, both in terms of the backlog and the turnaround period.
Lorna, the Councillor Binney.
Yes, thank you, Convener. I've just got a wee question actually about voids and things like that. And this has come to my attention, and it's extremely important for the net zero agenda we've got. In particular, a lot of people from the high rise come to me, and what they say is, you know, you've been clearing that house and that, and lots of good stuff has gone out, like good carpets and things like that. So when we're doing a voids, do we have an option that we can give to you people that, for example, they want to keep their carpets and things like that, rather than all that waste goes to landfill? Because I'd imagine a lot of the time that when we're doing up houses, there probably is good stuff left in them. So what is the process for that it can be kept?
Somebody, Stuart or Kenny?
I'm happy to answer that. We
Thank
do
you.
have a process in place at the present time regarding carpets, blinds and some of the findings within there. And that's why we try and get early appointment of a property to an individual so they can see if there's anything they could need. What I will say though is sometimes, and best intentions don't always carry out. For instance, although it's a good carpet, sometimes we need to lift it for electrical checks if there's a fault found. So they're the type of things there. We might see lovely light shades or lights that don't meet the electrical standard as well. So they may see things getting put out. It's not because we've not discussed with tenants. It's sometimes because they don't meet the health and safety requirements, or there's for another reason. But we have got instances where we do that quite a lot, Councillor.
Thanks, Kenny. But you can see my point there actually, because we've got to stop lots of things going to landfill. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on Appendix 4? I don't see any, and therefore I've just got to thank officers for their contributions, and thank councillors who are not members of the committee for taking the time to join us, and it's been appreciated.
There's an Appendix 5. There's an Appendix 5.
Appendix 5.
Oh,
It's historical data.
I do apologise. I am sorry, Appendix 5, my apologies. Thank you. I can't find it. I do apologise, I've got myself all mixed up here. Yes, I do apologise to you. I got mixed the two appendices together. Thank you. Any wish to say something? Yes, John, on bench 5. Thank you.
Right, on 5, I see that people seem satisfied with street cleaning. You know, you get occasional hotspots, but it certainly it's good that people kind of appreciate that. But one of the things that does get raised constantly is, and it'll come under street cleaning, is gullies. And the amount of inquiries I get with gullies, you know, and I'm forced to tell people, really, you know, I've not had this gully cleaned, and I'll say, well, you know, 10% of them's choked to the top, you know what I mean? And so can we get some report in future about the frequency now of the areas that get complete gully cleaning? Because, you know, there's one that's not in my ward, there's rakes in my ward I could identify, but the one I pass daily is going into the shops at Hall Glen in Lorna's ward, If you're going to go into the shops here, there's one on the right hand side, and you know the grass has been growing out it for a number of years now, and just as you get in, and I'm thinking that maybe the community will start putting it down as a flower bed a wee while, you know what I mean? Because you don't need to put any filler up, you just need to put a couple of plants on the top. But so I was just, could we get a kind of update on the amount of gully cleaning and the frequency, and has anything changed over the years? Because there does seem to be, I know we've got less gully mowers, so is that the problem? Is it savings we're making, or that? So I have a question on that, convener. And the last one is just for an informative. It was basically, we see the number of readmission to hospital after 28 days for discharges, charges, and I mean, it shows down, but I didn't see the figures as down. Who checks these figures? Because it's always a concern to me that I know we didn't like folk waiting in hospital, and we know that now it's a big issue because we've not got the care packages to get people out. But at the end of the day, that's less of an issue than the fact that somebody gets sent home from hospital and then has to get readmitted. So can we get an update sometime? I take it we'll know that here, but who actually looks into this? Why were they discharged if it was, you know, a same issue that they're back in with? So who checks that we aren't prematurely? We look at folk, it's, you know, the delay in getting them out, but is there people checking the figures for sending them out, and people that still need care, if you get what I mean? So that's my other question, convener.
Talking to myself, I do apologise. It made sense to me, but to nobody else there. I'm sorry. I'm inviting Ian Dryson to respond to the first question on the gullies first.
Thank you, Convener. I was trying to lip read you there. That's okay.
Sorry.
We've all done it. We've all done it, even after all this time. No, Convener, yeah, happy as Councillor McClucky's raised those points on road gullies. I'm happy to certainly give an action to come back with an update on that. As you're well aware of road gullies, some are more problem hotspots and others due to topography and alignment of roads, but certainly happy to give an update on where we stand with that and the latest position of the issues of the road gullies and the problems that we still encounter. So happy to bring that back to a future.
Thank you for that. And on the second question, is Stuart, would you respond or give us information on the hospital discharge?
Thanks. I can't, unfortunately, convener, but I think what we'll do is take an action to take back to colleagues in adult social care to provide a response to committee on just how that assessment is made.
Thank you for that. Any other questions on Appendix 5? If not, I know that Brian, you want to come in, but perhaps before we do, I just something my own personal thanks to officers for their fulsome responses to all the questions, and also I think to thank very much strongly all the councillors who are not on the committee for their taking part and showing their interest in the items under consideration. Brian, do you wish to?
Yeah, I was just wondering, convener, whether there's some actions obviously the officers are going to take back. For example, Mr. Naylor is going to come back with a briefing paper or on the speech and therapy and physiotherapy, sorry, which could come back to members, you know, anytime. There were quite a few actions though to do with litter and also the gully cleaning, which is kind of in the same area. I wonder, rather than getting an update report, you might want an actual report to come to the next meeting on that, because there's quite a few questions raised there, and it might be worth just getting in a formal report that comes back to the committee, so you can maybe spend 10-15 minutes considering the outcomes of the strategy.
I think in view of the special interest that's been shown by so many on litter and all the attached issues regarding cleansing, it would be a very appropriate, I'm sure, welcome if we get a report for our consideration.
I was going to apologise to Mr. Dryden, but obviously he's only going back to us. It's somebody else that writes the report, so he's.
I'll be happy to pass it on, Brian.
I think, convener, that ends the first section of the meeting, and this is the section where, as you said, members who aren't committee members are able to attend. What we normally do is, before we go into the second part, which is a single report, is you take a short 5-minute recess, and that allows Councillors Coombs, McHugh, Spears, and I think Councillor Nimmell's already away to leave the meeting.
Thank you.
So maybe if it's 11:22, committee
Sure.
comes back at 11:30, would that be acceptable?
Yes, thank you.
Been thrown out of better places. Thanks, Brian.
No comment.
Bye all.
Maybe remember switch off their cameras and remember we're still live streaming during this period.
All right, David.
How are you, James?
I've had yourself.
Yeah, I'm all right, thanks. You busy?
I'm going to say.
As-
I'm going to say always.
Yeah, always, James, always. Oh, Dennis. You're on mute.
You're on mute, Dennis. Tell him mute.
Sorry, I'm just saying, I just love these quick meetings.
I just remind members that we will be live streaming this part of the agenda as well.
Just need to ask Councillor McHugh. Can I just remind, just as we're coming back to the second part, ask Councillor McHugh if she could leave the meetings. This is just for the members of the committee. But she's welcome, obviously, to watch the meeting on the live stream. She's there.
Can switch her up, of course. Right. Yeah, okay. Right, welcome back to our meeting and agenda item 6. And Stuart, can I ask you to talk to us through the paper, please?
Thank you, Convener. Members will recall that we report to this committee the national reports issued by the Accounts Commission and provide some local context on how the Council is responding to the national messages set out by the Commission. The report before you this morning looks back at the Accounts Commission's report published in May of this year and looks forward to our own best value report, which will be published by the Accounts Commission in December or January. The Accounts Commission report covers the period from the initial COVID outbreak and sets out examples of how councils and their communities have responded to the challenges of the pandemic. The Commission have used a number of case studies throughout the report, and our own ETU is mentioned on page 20 of the Commission's report as example number 4. Paragraph 4.3 of the report sets out the 10 key messages in the national report and provides some narrative for each of these. I'm not going to go through each of these 10 key messages. Instead, I'm going to return to section 5 of the report, which provides the local context against each of these 10 national messages. And the majority of the information contained in section 5 has already been presented to members either at this committee or at the executive. So it's been in the elected member domain for some months now. I'd like to draw members' attention to paragraph 5.7 of the report, which provides a short summary of how our two biggest services, education and adult social care, responded over the period of the pandemic. Hopefully members get some sense within the context of the paragraph of the work on the ground that's gone in over the course of the last year or so. We've used two services, but the same would apply right across the council and its wider families. I think there are a number of takeaways for us from this report. The transformation projects, such as the new Falkirk Plan, closer to communities and community choices, are vital to help build community capacity and confidence, and we've already spoken about these projects in the previous item. Council's facing a challenging financial situation. The report to the Council in May estimated that our budget gaps are somewhere in the region of about £55 million over the next 4 years. Gaps need to be bridged through transformation, and that'll be about how we respond from COVID, or it's through budget cuts. The digital offering of services has moved on significantly in the last 18 months. We've got increased flexibility for our employees, which will support our SPR and the move towards fewer buildings. Digital has allowed those who can self-help to do so and freed up time for council officers to support those who need our help. Finally, convener, we've covered in the report the council's response to COVID, and the report notes that a further report will come to this committee on COVID before the end of the year. And I understand the intention is that that will be a report to the November meeting of council, of Scrutiny Committee. The recommendations convener set out in section 2 of the report. I'm happy to answer any questions that members have along with colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Stuart. Questions, anyone?
So McCluckie and Benny.
Councillor McCluckie.
Aye, thanks. There's an awful lot of information about this report, and I thank Stuart for his reality, telling us how difficult it's going to be, particularly this year. This is the first time I've heard officers really fearing the worst about how they meet the budgets. What I was trying to say though, the vast majority of members of the public, and that's who we've got to be accountable, because we represent all the constituents in Falkirk, are unaware. They know we make savings, but they do not know the size of each department. They do know that education's a priority, but when we're looking at budget, they just say, we'll just take off, take off another budget and that. And I think we have to be a bit more honest with the people, not to discuss the budgets or where it goes, about the difficulty we find ourselves in. So I think we should be giving information to the public out there, the percentages in which, what a department has. I mean, education is about 70% of our budget or something like that. And the issues that, like ring fencing money brings to the equation, and obviously other things that we can't touch. So when we're talking about a department's budget, what we should be doing is evaluating it the same with health, or different things. We should be looking at it and saying, look here, this is how much we get. We're asked to go and find X amount of percent, but this is the huge wedge that we can't touch. So that only leaves that wee bit there. It's no saying that's the decisions making, but I think we've got to a stage after 14-year cuts that we need to enlighten the people that where we are, that the council can't operate with this unless it's to a reduced service in the future. And that's what, obviously, I don't agree with it, but at the end of the day, that's what officers say and their experience or advice that has to happen. And so I think we've got to make public aware of that. So it's just my view, but I wonder if an officer could maybe respond and do you think that would be a good idea or no idea? Thank you.
John, I think some of your comments, which is you're no doubt correct, but will be the concern of the budget working group. But perhaps Stuart
Thanks.
Before we do that, I'm sorry, Councillor Goldie, you wanted to come in, please.
I'm happy to wait if you want to let John get his question answered. Convener, whatever you want, I'm
Thank
happy
you.
to do.
Okay. Stuart, would you like to answer John's question?
Yeah, thanks, convener. Again, Councillor McCluckie makes a very good point. Our intention is to take a report to the second meeting of the executive in October, which will kickstart, if you like, the budget round for financial year 22-23, and included within that report will be a number of the issues that Councillor McCluckie has raised. So the report will set out the scale of the financial challenge facing the council, but also just the gearing that we have in terms of education services being half of the council's budget, the funding that comes directly to the council, which, as you say, is ring-fenced, and that'll kickstart a public consultation as well as staff engagement. So a report to the second meeting of the executive in October will cover off the issues that Councillor McCluckie has raised, and as Councillor Patrick mentioned just before he handed over to me, the council's member budget working group has now started to meet and had its first meeting just at the tail end of last week. So the member engagement in the budget process has just started to.
Thank you for that. Perhaps Councillor Goldie followed by Councillor Binney.
Yeah, convener, I'm going to do a thing I've never done in my life. I'm going to apologise before I start, because what I'm going to say possibly a lot of people might not want to hear. However, I'm going to refer to page 46, paragraph 4.3, item 3, which is on the Commissioner's report, and it identifies 10 key messages. And the key messages you can see on item 3, level of service disruption. But the part I would like to talk about is the disruption to services has had significant negative impacts on vital areas and on some client groups. These included carers who lacked access to respite care. Now you'll see, and we'll all be aware now of what's being proposed for the carers, because we can't get people employed, we can't get people to work in care homes, and we can't get people to work in our care services. Now, I've got to say about that, I understand the shortages and I can understand all the skills. And by the way, whilst it might not appear like it to officers, I fully appreciate the budget concerns that they have. But if we can't get carers because someone else, if Falkirk Council can't bring in people as carers or to train in social care because they're not paying the proper rate, then we've got to start paying the proper rate. And if it costs more money, then we need to find that money, convener. Because make no mistake about it, when we went along the road looking at a super duper HQ in the High Street and a beautiful theatre in the High Street, running at the suggested cost of 58 to 59 million pounds, and that's only to start off, so you can all know how that works. We need to seriously consider all the aspects of the budget, and people here are talking about the budget review, but I'm going to tell you something right now. People will die if we don't get carers into their homes. So we have to find that money. And this was in Mayor's report came out. We've got to find money to do that, because let me finish on this before everybody can have their opinion on what I'm saying, but let me finish on this. If we took all the councillors and all the officers and put them on a boat in the middle of the Atlantic and nobody had a phone, nobody had any means of contacting us, nobody would notice. But if somebody's got a problem that needed a carer in their home this morning, and that carer's time's cut to 10 minutes, or that carer doesn't arrive, and they've got a massive problem, and they notice that right away. So all I'm saying, colleagues, is we need to look very closely. But I would urge us, let's find the money for the carers, because that has got to be done. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you for that, Councillor Goldie. Councillor Benny?
Yes, thank you, Convener. Yeah, no, it's a very interesting report, and I take it on board, certainly. And I must commend all the workforce actually during the pandemic for all the accelerated changes, and that's management and staff on the ground, and obviously people in our communities as well. But what I'm understanding from this, all the changes that's taken place, it's been absolutely massive working actually. The workforce changing, taking up new roles, government structures, council structures changing in processes and things like that, and all the financial challenges. But one thing that I've not noticed much in this report is about the communication internally and externally. Really, I would like to know how that is measured. You know, I'm hearing from the communities and that they're finding it hard to get through to the council and things like that. And I am hearing from services too, they're waiting an answer. So the crux of our business for an efficient service, even though with all the changes, in the middle of it is the communication. So maybe it's good, maybe it's poor, maybe it's average, I don't know, but that never gets mentioned. And all part of communication has an action. And if that communication is not getting through, if we're not talking to one another, we're just going to remain stagnant, and that is not efficient for a council business. So my question is, I'll get to the point now, is do we measure internal communication? Do we measure external communication? I know at one point external communication used to get measured. You knew the number of calls that used to come through at the council, the time that it took, etc., etc. So I'm wondering if that's still getting done, and what is the outcomes for that in relation to this report?
Yeah. Stuart, could you respond?
Thank you, Convener. I'll try and do my best here. Councillor Binney is correct. Communication is vital at the best of times. If you think of what the organisation and our communities have faced over the course of the last 18 months or so, it becomes even more vital that we get it right. I guess that communication is such a broad topic. I'll try and just cover off a few areas on it. If I think about internal communication, so I'll start with internal communication with councillors, and I think on a weekly basis we were providing at the start of the pandemic weekly updates to elected members on key activities and issues within the council and their communities. And as time went on, weekly became fortnightly became monthly, and then it became less frequent as we settled into a kind of steady state of service delivery. So I'd like to think that members felt that they were kept appraised of critical issues within the council. Turning to employees, and this is mentioned in the body of the report, communication is vital at a time like this, both formal and informal. So I know that on a formal basis we were issuing a number of messages across the council of key information, reassurance and signposting of areas where employees could get help if they so wished. Managers tried to stay in touch with their teams on the basis of kind of formal Teams calls, but also things like WhatsApp calls, just informal communication. We did a pulse survey over the course of the pandemic, and one of the actions in the rolling action log is for us to report back to members on the action plan from that pulse survey, and that's coming to members in November. As far as external communication is concerned, I think we've tried to do that in a number of ways. We've tried to do that through our website. We've tried to do that through things like CLD, and we've tried to do it through the community conversations that Kenny spoke about earlier in the agenda. We've tried to do it through our partners as well, recognising that we're not always the best people to deliver the message. So the third sector, really important. So I think our communication has been good. Could it have been better? Of course it could have been better. And I think it's about picking up what the lessons learned, were, and trying to see how we improve in our comms going forward. Sorry, Convener, can I get the impression I've spoken for a while on that, but there's so many angles, I think, to the issue of communications that Councillor Binney's raised.
Thank you, Mr. Ritchie. Just if I could just come back in just for a short while, just on the subject of communication and feedback. I think it's very important for employees to feedback up the way, actually, things that they're seeing in the community, things they're doing in the community, things like that. So do we still have that process in place that employees can still feedback to the managers and have a discussion on that? Because I did have a service that did come to me, and they did see, and I'm not going to name any names, but they did see that they're putting things back to the managers and they're not being listened to. But I just thought I'd bring that to your attention, because it's vitally important, because they're on the ground, they're the foot soldiers, or they're the workers, and they maybe see issues, they maybe see processes that are maybe not working, things like that, and they want to communicate that, and they want to communicate that with people in their service. So I'm just wondering if that does happen.
I'm not quite sure what the question is, but I understand the theme of your remarks. Stuart, could you respond?
I'll try and pick that up. You're absolutely right, Councillor Binney, and it's the same lines as Councillor Goldie. The foot soldiers, as you term them, are the lifeblood of the council, so they've got a much better view of what's happening in the world than people at the other end of the organisational structure. So, the purpose of one-to-one and team meetings is not just about tasks, if I could call that. It's about well-being as well, and we've tried to be really mindful about well-being of our employees. So we've tried to put a structure in place. Does it work perfectly all the time? I doubt that's the case, but I'd like to think that if it doesn't work on a formal basis, employees think that they've got somewhere else that they can go with a concern. We've established a well-being group, and that's referred to in the body of the report as well. That's chaired by the Chief Executive, representatives from the body of the Kirk in that particular group. So there's a kind of direct line there for the foot soldiers, as you would call them, straight to the top of the organisation.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Naylor, were you going to come in there?
Thanks, Convener. Just as Stuart's outlined, I mean, communication at all levels is really important. And although the Audit Scotland report messages make reference to the complexity of all the 10 things that they've pointed out, it certainly would be my observation that over the course of the pandemic, the communication both within the organisation and with external facing messages has increased, I think, significantly. Stuart's mentioned one of the forums, the wellbeing group, but there's been a number of different forums created for the workforce, certainly within children's services. We are meeting with trade unions every week, and we have done since March 2020. Now, in the past, we would have had scheduled meetings maybe on a 6-weekly basis. So the level and detail of communication to capture incoming messages from the front line have gone through the roof. If I think about Stuart mentioned that we had sort of daily briefings, then weekly briefings, and then moved away. But I think what's happened in the organisation is that officers have reflected on what's changed and what do various different client groups need to know, what do members need to know, what do parents need to know, what do people in the community need to know. Stuart also mentioned the website. The level of updating and activity around changing messages on the website has been like never before. Certainly within children's services, we've used the text messaging service like never before, so that we've got the latest and the best information, advice, guidance to parents, to pupils, and hopefully to members. And just a final observation, from a personal point of view, I think I have seen more of members in the last 15 months than ever before. All of our committees are back up and running, but if you think about the number of forums that we have now in terms of community engagement, in terms of the SPR, I certainly feel that I've seen all of you much more frequently than we did before. So Stuart's right, communication will never be perfect, but I think the council has done an extraordinary job in terms of making sure that we are trying to cover off all angles. Can we get better? Obviously we can, but I think based on my experience of where I live, I think Falkirk is doing a tremendous job in this regard. Thanks for your indulgence, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Balfour, following by Councillor Blackwood.
Thanks, Convener. Just going back to the carer's salary, it was mentioned there that the council doesn't pay enough for carers. This was raised the other day at another meeting by another councillor, and it turns out that that information is completely wrong. And we actually, as far as I remember, we were told that we actually pay £500 a year more than the NHS pays their carers for the same work. So I'm just wondering why the councillors have got this wrong information, and then why we're putting out this negative view. I mean, it's hardly surprising we can't get people to come and work as carers for the council if we're getting this constantly putting the council and the service down. So can we not give a positive view on it so we can actually get some more staff in?
Convener, could I come in under 18.1? I didn't
You
say
weren't
the
mentioned,
council.
that's not 18.1.
That's 18.1. It refers to a statement I made. But I'm not going to fall out with you. What I'm telling you is facts. It says I said in a report the other day that we can't get people because we're not paying. We need to pay the other outside sections pay me more money than us. Well, if you can't get somebody, you've got to just keep paying more money. And can I tell you that at one time we applied for a chief executive and thought we didn't get the proper quality of client, and we were paying substantial money. So what we had to do then was we had to up the money to go and get the client. You need to get the carers, and if you've got to pay more money, it's not obviously the rate we're paying the new isn't attracting them. So you've obviously got to pay more money. I didn't say we're not paying the rate for the job. What I said is you'll need to pay more money.
I think you did say that we weren't paying the rate for the job. So, and we are,
Well,
we're paying over the rate for the job.
I'm not going to get into an argument about it because what is the point of arguing? People are going to die. We're just going to sit and debate whether we're paying the rate for the job or not.
I think we need to move on because you've got the wrong information as we were told at the meeting the other day. So we need to move on.
The party line. You keep on the party line, you'll be all right.
That was information straight for the officer. So can we have that clarified on the remuneration for carers, please?
Councillor Blackwood.
Thanks, Convener. A couple of questions. Page 49, the last bullet point of 5.1, youth unemployment increase in the Falkirk area from 5.35 in March 2020 and to 10.1 in June 2020, and then reduced to 7.4 in May 2021, which is obviously going the right road and is welcome. However, the furlough scheme is ending, and I see unemployment rising, and I just wonder if these youths are in permanent position, but the permanent position doesn't help if furlough schemes finishing and people are paying, or companies are paying people off. Do we see this trend going down, continuing, or do we see it increasing? My first question.
Stuart?
Yes, thanks, Convener. I suspect that that will be an action that will need to be taken off table, and colleagues in economic development come back unless Ian happens to know the answer.
No, Stuart, thank you, Convener and Councillor Blackwood. I understand there is an rolling action log. There is an undertaking that a report will be coming to the Scrutiny Committee in November on the employment targets. So that's certainly something that we can cover in that report. So there is an undertaking that there will be an update provided at the next Scrutiny Committee in November, and we can cover that point.
Thanks, Ian. And my other questions on page 55, the topic, the underspend, the 14 million in the COVID funding. Is that the 14 million going off to see us through to the end of the financial year, or are we going to have a shortfall at the finish up?
I'll try and pick that up, Convener. So we reported to the executive a couple of weeks ago on our projection for the current year. I'll kind of emphasise the fact it's the projection, so there's still a good bit to go in the financial year, including a winter period, which at the best of times can be difficult for the council with increased unexpected expenditure and things like gritting for roads. So the 14 million that is carried forward is factored in to our projections for the current year. We update the executive every second month with our projections, so we'll be due to report again to the executive probably in that second meeting in October that I mentioned earlier on, with the latest projections on the financial position for the council.
Thanks, Stuart. Thanks, Convener.
Anyone else want to raise a question? If not, sorry, Councillor Binney, my apologies. Lorna, I didn't see your hand there.
It's okay. Just a wee general question. I was just wondering how many staff are actually back at their desks in the office at the moment. Is there a percentage of staff, or is the majority still working from home?
I'll try and pick that up, Convener. So majority of our staff have always been out working on the front line. So if you think about carers, you think about building maintenance, you think about roads, you think about the litter team, refuse collection, I could go on, and they have been out on the front line over the course of, well, just as normal. What we have is a number of staff who are working from home instead of being in an office, and that is in accordance with the government's guidelines of continue to work from home wherever that's possible. But the vast majority of our employees on the front line have continued to be in the front line over the course of the pandemic.
Thank you.
Okay, right. Well, thank you again for the officers, particularly for their responses, which have been detailed and most helpful. And I'd like to thank members for their contributions, which have been also very much to the point, and will raise further responses. Sorry, David, did you have your hand up again? Did I miss somebody? No? Okay, right. So thank you again for your attendance. And also note, by the way, thank you, Sophie, for your diligent recording of our ramblings, which very much to the point and will be appreciated. Thank you very much. That's the meeting closed.
Thanks, Convener. Bye.
Thanks, Convener. Bye.
Everybody, thank you.